United States submarine base at Key West, Florida. A dispatch that quoted President Truman's press secretary, Charles Ross, as saying that President Truman has no knowledge of any secret project by this government that would give substance to the existence of such objects. Ross also said that both the Air Force and the Navy deny that such...
Hi.
Hi.
You know, hey, what's up? My name's Noelle, and I am what happens when you don't put on lotion before you get a spray tan, and then you get these little crusty bits around your fingers, and that is such a noob move. That is such a new kids on the block type beat, and I'm disappointed in myself for allowing that to happen.
That is embarrassing for you. I've also done it, but I did it in my youth with Mia when we went, and I feel like spray tan technology has evolved to the sense where you're like not as orange.
Yes.
But you have to know to like put the lotion on, so that's on you.
Mm-hmm.
But back in the day, you used to have to pay a little bit extra for like toner to be added in so you wouldn't get orange.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. And so me and I were like, no, we don't need that.
Yeah.
And Bish, when I tell you, like little Charmanders, little Oompa Loompas running around, I came out and I was like, this was a mistake. We looked so fucking orange. Like we would have looked like Donald Trump's children with how orange we got. It was pathetic.
Also, you're Chelsea, but
oh yeah, I am Chelsea.
I just want to say, I really do think that I was on the front lines of spray tan technology. I was probably 13 when I got my first spray tan, and it was one of the most horrific experiences I've ever had in my life. It was me and my cousins and my mom and my aunt, and went into a machine that sounded like a broke down F-150. And it shot thick goop, which, you know, sounds horrible.
That's not normal.
Yeah, it shot thick goop at me. And it was so, like, thick and sticky and smelly. I genuinely thought that, like, I had been doused in molasses. And then the girl at the front desk, because remember, this was like back before people realized tanning was bad for you and smoking was bad for you. And they were just chain smoking Marlboro Reds in the lobby, telling the teenagers to go in the tanning booth. Right. She was like, you know what the best thing to do after a spray tan is? And I go, what? And she goes, get in the bed. And so I got the world's thickest, nastiest spray tan, which I'm assuming was made out of the same sticky material that fly traps are made out of. That was put on me, and then I went into a fucking tanning bed and cooked it out for like 15 minutes.
That's a long time to be in a tanning bed.
Girl, I used to do the 20s. I used to do 20s all day.
I used to go for a while in high school. So this isn't a myth. This isn't a conspiracy, but if you have like acne, you can go like burn it off of your skin.
That's why we were there. You burn the acne off, get melanoma instead.
Right. So,
which the teenage mind thinks is a good deal.
But I think I went once and the lady was like, have you been tanning at all this year? And I said, no. And she looked at me and my heritage and said, you should go for 7 minutes on medium. Yeah. And I was like, put me in for 15 on high. And I came out like unrecognizable.
I bet.
Rachel Dolezal is out there claiming other people's racial heritage. I came out fucking tomato red. I made Heinz ketchup look pale. I was I can
imagine.
Oh my God. And the burn and the itch from a tanning bed sunburn hurts worse. Like it hurts in a different way.
Because you're laying on the sun, girl. You're laying on it. You're laying in a glass coffin encased by the artificial sun. It is something. So anyway, you know, but the struggle is very much real. I'm going to a rave this weekend because I'm in my let's not be sad era. And I put on a pair of shorts and looked at myself in the mirror and said, oh my fucking God.
You know, I still have the Boo Paul outfit with like the eyes and the mouth shorts. So if you ever want to like get into it.
That would have been a nice little outfit. I am wearing kind of a Dune themed outfit for the first day. Very much I'm going to halt the spice production type vibes.
Ooh.
And then the second day is honestly an outfit that I wish I could wear every day. It's I'm wearing my Real Trees camo pants and a chainmail bra.
That's fucking sick. You're gonna look so good.
I know, honestly, it's just a good fit. So anyway,
you should just wear that every day.
I think I will. I actually think I will.
So pretend other people who are listening, pretend you don't hear this. Sign up to come officiate or bench coach a Junction game. Get sick, get travel stipend, and then we party. And we wear those outfits all weekend. Okay. In the California summer sun.
Okay. Do you want me to apply to be a bench coach?
That'd be hilarious.
I'll do it.
And then just be like, we don't feel good today.
No, I'll do it.
Go to Universal Studios.
Oh, but you want to ditch too. Because I said I'll be a bench coach, girl. I'll yell.
Yeah. You can be a jammer coach. You can just do it with Ichabod. Ichabod's our coach. He's coming to everything. And we're renting a Airbnb.
And then we do charades. I just copy his movements and that's us.
just voguing on the sidelines. And I'll be like, I know what to do.
Mm-hmm. I'm like, you guys got that, right?
Yeah. It'd be like, imagine like fierce, you know how like baseball people do the signs and stuff? Imagine like fierce voguing.
That's it.
And then like, oh, that'd be so sick. In a perfect world.
We can make it happen. But anyway, before we get into our heavy topic for the day, I have one more thing to add.
Yeah.
If you are a work from home cis or Mr. or they, them, or honestly, if you just like use a keyboard in your everyday life, this is not an advertisement, but it should be. If they want to sponsor us, I'm totally here and willing. Mitchell Tyler Sarter got me this keyboard for Valentine's Day.
It looks like food. Like it looks like...
Well, it's the milk tea model. It's called the milk tea. It is one of those like clacky little ASMR keyboards.
Yeah. Look at what I'm dealing with. Look at this garbage.
Yeah,
it's
dude.
An Apple keyboard. Yeah. It's just an Apple keyboard. Trash.
And it's as thick as paper. I got rid of that fucking shit. It's in my closet. This thing, it makes me want to type. It makes me want to do my job. I've never been so locked in.
Point your microphone towards it and then just type like Chelsea and Noel.
It should have been, honestly, I should have the sound gate on, but I'll try it anyway. Hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Hold on, let me open a different one.
I'll give a thumbs up if we can hear it, and then I'll give a thumbs down if we can't hear it. I hear nothing.
Oh, yeah, that's my sound gate be working on the microphone. But anyway,
just imagine your eardrums eating the sound of delicious Girl Scout cookies.
So fucking good. It's the Lofree, Lofree, milk tea.
Like,
ooh, it is
Typhoid Taylor sent us a video of Moose farting, but on the video she was typing, and I just salivated.
Yeah, it's the same keyboard. So
so jealous, Oliver. If you're listening to this,
if you're listening,
I demand you give me even more money for things that you deem unnecessary. So
I think it's pretty necessary. It has to do with our jobs. But anyway, besides the point, let's take our spray tan hats and keyboard hats off and get into serious mode and talk about this episode.
Yeah, I don't think this one's going to be fun in the slightest.
It's not going to be fun at all.
So let's get into it.
Yeah, start with our disclaimer.
Yeah, so Noelle and I have both been personally touched by the tragedy of suicide, a painful experience that we believe that many of our listeners also share. We urge you to safeguard your well-being by steering clear of distressing images and potentially triggering audio content. The manner and message that we're going to talk about tonight, which is Aaron Bushnell's passing, are profoundly shocking, and it's very important to approach such topics with care for your own mental and emotional health. So it's not going to be a very fun episode. Don't listen if that stuff bothers you. If it triggers you, we'll put out something fun for next time.
Yeah, we'll do something fun next week. But yeah, definitely big trigger warning. But I will say we're not playing audio and we're not we're not playing the video. We're not playing the audio. Yeah. We're just talking about it. But still, keep in mind if you're sensitive to those types of things.
Which I am. That fucking triggered me, bro. Like when you guys sent that to me, I had just dropped Oliver off for surgery and I was getting in my car to go pick up his prescriptions. And I heard the audio and I just saw the blurred out video on Twitter and it is profoundly disturbing.
Oh yeah, it's very disturbing. I mean, I don't want to pressure anyone into watching or listening to it. That's not it at all. But I think that bearing witness to it it made me feel the same way I feel like when we talk about the aftermaths of mass shootings, where it's like, this is supposed to make you uncomfortable. You should feel uncomfortable, and it's almost your duty to feel uncomfortable, and you need to like sit through this and absorb it and feel its weight and and deal and like go through that, like sit with it for a second. I think we're in such a society of the instantaneous, and it's made us almost numb to a lot of things, and it's made us be able to create like a cognitive dissonance. And I think that's why like a lot of these issues we haven't moved forward on, because it's like out of sight, out of mind. And that's where I felt like it was like my duty to like sit and watch and listen and feel and hurt and like suffer, and like it made me have like a visceral reaction, but I was like, that's the point. You know? So I mean, again, but I don't want to I don't want anyone to watch it who would feel uncomfortable, but I definitely felt like it was important to, if you did watch it, to like carry the weight of that and not just dismiss it. You know, I think like a lot of us growing up on the internet in like the early days with like unfiltered shit, you know, with like rotten.com and shit like that, we were basically subjected to watching like raw content of the war in the Middle East, and or just like torture porn, honestly. And you become desensitized. And I think like the way that I watched this, it was me forcing myself to not be so desensitized. It was like me forcing myself to like sit with it and have it kind of like wash over me. So it was very heavy. It was very traumatizing.
Yes. I watched the blurred video, but I did see stills of it after, but the stills have just been shared based on my algorithm. So even then, that was still like, I'm not going to say it was too much. It overwhelmed me significantly. And I wonder if that's what triggered the depressive state that I'm in, where I'm just very sensitive. We'll get into it. We're going to say what he says in the video too. So I don't know. Watch it if you are so curious, but it fucked both of us up pretty extensively. So anyway, here we go. On February 25th, 2024, a profound and distressing event took place at the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., as Aaron Bushnell, a 25-year-old member of the United States Air Force, resorted to self-immolation as a form of protest. The act was premeditated, which was evidenced by Bushnell's preparation of a will.
And in this will, he stated, quote, "I am sorry to my brother and my friends for leaving you like this. Of course, if I was truly sorry, I wouldn't be doing it. But the machine demands blood. None of this is fair. I wish for my remains to be cremated. I do not wish for my ashes to be scattered or my remains to be buried, as my body does not belong anywhere in this world. If a time comes when Palestinians regain control of their land, and if the people native to that land would be open to the possibility, I would love for my ashes to be scattered in a free Palestine."
He also reached out to media outlets, indicating his intention to protest against the genocide of the Palestinian people. And before the incident occurred, Bushnell stated, quote, "I am an active duty member of the United States Air Force, and I will no longer be complicit to genocide. I'm about to engage in an extreme act of protest. But compared to what people have been experiencing in Palestine at the hands of their colonizers, it's not extreme at all. This is what our ruling class has decided will be normal." Bushnell's protest was not just an impromptu act of despair, but a planned event, meticulously prepared to draw attention to his cause. Before the act, he created a Twitch account under the pseudonym Lily Anar Kitty, featuring a Palestinian flag and the slogan "Free Palestine" as his profile banner. His live stream commenced with a poignant declaration of his intent, criticizing the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the broader implications of global political stances on the issue.
Earlier in the day, Aaron had posted this to his Facebook along with that said Twitch link to his stream. Quote, "Many of us like to ask ourselves, what would I do if I was alive during slavery or the Jim Crow South or apartheid? What would I do if my country was committing genocide? The answer is, you're doing it right now." The Air Force said Bushnell was a cyber defense operations specialist with the 531st, 531.
I would say 531st. That sounds right. 531st? I don't know.
531st Intelligence Support Squadron at Joint Base San Antonio. A friend of his would later go on record saying, quote, his actual job involves the processing of intelligence data. Some of what he was processing had to do with the Israel-Gaza conflict. One of the things he told me is that coming across his desk was the U.S. military's involvement in the genocides going on in Palestine. He told me that we had troops on the ground, that were there and were killing a large number of Palestinians, end quote. After spending too much time on defense.gov, I will summarize it with these two quotes. Approximately 900 U.S. troops are in the process of deploying to the U.S. Central Command areas of operation, Secretary Air Force General Pat Ryder said, quote, I won't talk specific deployment locations for these forces. I can confirm that they are not going to Israel, end quote. But I will also say there are multiple videos and pictures circulating online that seem to show American soldiers participating alongside the Israeli occupational forces in Gaza.
Yeah, it's easy to say they're not going to Israel because they're probably going to Palestine.
Yeah, right? They're doing the little 1-2 flip, the flip it and reverse it. But I also do think it's interesting that Aaron was in the Air Force, and it was specifically an Air Force general that came out with this statement. And it was like a friend between, and also apparently other people Aaron had talked to before, saying like, no, I'm telling you, like, I have seen that we are not just sending aid to Israel. We are actually sending boots on the ground to fight alongside the Israeli armed forces.
It's really interesting, like anything that has come out from the United States government about this, because I watched a 45-minute YouTube video that was talking about a White House press conference specifically about Aaron Bushnell, and it kind of like cut into the middle of it. I almost thought it was a live video, but they're talking about like process. And I'm like, what the fuck procedural stuff are they talking about? And then a reporter asks about Aaron Bushnell specifically. And the guy's like, we're reviewing it. And then they move on. And the whole process about what was happening was somebody had like a root canal or like some weird medical procedure. And they wanted to make sure that the chain in command was that the president knew that somebody was unavailable. And I was like a 45-minute press briefing where they slipped this in. And it's like, and someone was like, even the like journalist tried to follow up on it. Like, do you think that this is going to lead to other ongoing issues? And he's like, I'm here to talk about procedural reports. And I'm like, you're doing a press conference because somebody had a medical procedure and you want to make sure that the president knows about that in case he tries to get in contact with him. It was very like
smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. And it was like, as an American citizen, if I see a representative of our armed forces burning themselves alive, I want to fucking know what the White House has to say about it. And for that to be kind of like so dismissed, I'm like, oh, okay. That actually says pretty much all I needed to know.
Yeah. And they did come out with a statement, but it was very eventually, not in a timely manner. They eventually did. And it was just some of the most, I mean, obviously insincere, like, sidesteppy bullshit I've ever fucking seen in my life. It was what a horrible tragedy. Our thoughts are with the family. Yeah. It's, what are they going to do? Finally admit? Yeah. And the spin that came out against him was pretty sad, like saying, oh, well, it was obvious that he was suffering from mental illness. And we're definitely going to get into that later in the episode. But I think they were trying to underplay. Absolutely. That they were the cause. Absolutely. 1,000%. So the choice of location for the self-immolation was the front gate of the Israeli embassy. And the timing, which was approximately 12:58 p.m. local time, was clearly aimed at maximizing the visibility of his protest. Bushnell's actions and words during the live stream highlighted his profound distress over the situation in Palestine
and his refusal to be part of what he viewed as complicity in genocide by his government and military. He screamed, "Free Palestine," until the bitter end.
I just want to say, I know that this is like a really tough subject to talk about, and what happened is like tough to talk about, but I cannot help but remember this imagery. And while being like horrified by it, I also remember thinking like, what a tough motherfucker. That when you say he screamed "Free Palestine" till the bitter end, I'm talking the bitter end.
Yeah, you're listening to somebody burning alive for a minute.
Yep, and he is in the most excruciating pain, actively dying in front of us in the most torturous way, is still screaming "Free Palestine." And I remember like when I like sat with it again and kind of I let the like shock of it all go over me. Literally the first thought I had was, this is such a tough motherfucker. Like that's insane. That is and it's also like speaks to how deeply he cared for this, right?
Yeah.
He almost tapped into something beyond human capacity.
Yeah, that's the only way I'd be able to describe it, was he transcended at that moment into another plane.
Mm-hmm.
It was rough.
Yeah, it was heavy. It was heavy.
So the response to Bushnell's burning himself alive, or self-immolation, was immediate, with security and law enforcement personnel rushing to assist. And despite their efforts, Bushnell succumbed to his injuries, leaving behind a trail of questions and a heightened awareness of the intense feelings surrounding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And in perhaps the most American of all imagery, as Bushnell burned, security officers pointed their guns at him, while another man screamed that he didn't need guns, he needed fire extinguishers.
That being how the video essentially ends is, you could not sit in a writer's room and come up with that fucking scene. No. It is just truly the most picture perfect example of like America's hypocrisy and just vileness. Like, he is on the ground, basically dead. They've already used one fire extinguisher on him, and there's one fucking cop who the entire time has not left his fucking gun pointed at him the entire time. And if I'm remembering correctly, no trigger discipline either. No finger on the side. It was ready to go. He was fully, and like tracking his body as he fell too. It was just some of the sickest fucking shit I've ever seen. Just truly sick and twisted was that cop just staying on him. And then, of course, that other responder, I think it was a cop with a gun, and it was a security guard of the facility who had used one fire extinguisher and then was screaming for another, and then screamed at him, "I don't need your guns. I need a fire extinguisher." And I was just like, there it is. There it is. If you want to see, that's it right there. If you want to see anything that describes the current state of the United States, it's that image right there. Yeah. It's this active Air Force member self-immolating to protest the US sending $14 billion to participate in fucking genocide in Gaza. And while he's doing that, doing nothing but hurting himself, right? Yeah. He's getting fucking marked down by some cop, gun pointed on him till the bitter fucking end. It's just, it's sick. That end of that video, nothing could have prepared you for it. You thought you saw the worst with just this act of protest, and then it ends with that, and you're like, Jesus fucking Christ.
You thought you heard like the real message of the video with him screaming "Free Palestine," but for it to end with that, you're like, oh, that's really the issue here, though. Yep. Like guns, violence, all of this stuff while the world is burning and we're pointing a gun at it. Yep. Very interesting. Yeah.
All we needed was a fire extinguisher to end this fucking violence and war and torture and fire. And you're sitting there pointing a fucking gun at it. It is so beyond a metaphor. It almost feels divine, like a divine intervention gave us this closing scene. You literally, I can't stress enough, you could not have written this in a room full of writers trying to depict a scene. It's fucking insane.
Mm-hmm. And the aftermath of the incident saw a coordinated investigation by the Secret Service, Metropolitan Police Department, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. And the response included a precautionary examination of a suspicious vehicle, which was later deemed safe. And the incident report hinted at Bushnell's mental distress, while the Israeli embassy confirmed the safety of all staff members, distancing the institution from the physical harm of the protest. News agencies who reported in the incident began putting up suicide hotlines and other mental health services at the conclusion of the story before moving on. Now, this hits hard for two reasons. First, the United States government and its newsroom lackeys do not give one shit about the mental health of American citizens, let alone its military members.
I would almost say especially its military members.
Yeah, they don't give two shits about
Not
it.
a single shit.
It's actually probably cheaper for them if they all kill themselves.
Yeah. They honestly write that into the budget versus giving them any sort of health care, like through GI bills.
Yeah. And I say that as scathing as I mean it to be.
Yeah.
And two, saying Bushnell was mentally ill enough to turn to suicide is dismissing the role of self-immolation in history with references dating all the way back to ancient times. Do not call it suicide.
Yeah, it is. I know we're going to get into it, but I cannot say how upsetting it is to see people just references. It's like, oh, he was mentally ill. Oh, he committed suicide. That was just a mentally ill person doing. Nothing has ever been more proving of someone with full cognizance and understanding than his letter to both his friends and family and his message before doing so. It's such a disservice. And I mean, obviously, that's why the people who say it, right? They want to take away the power from the action. Like, he made the ultimate sacrifice to get a point across in protest. And you are sticking a middle finger up to him when you dismiss this as like mental illness or someone committing suicide. It's fucking disturbing.
It's very different. But it does beg the question. We have seen various protest methods such as hunger strikes and walkouts work before. So why use this horrific method to make a statement? Well, to answer that, we really have to go back into history, because historically, instances of self-immolation have been recorded in both the East and the West, dating back to antiquity and carrying through to the modern era. Figures from Greco-Roman mythology, such as Hercules and Dido, are said to have chosen death by fire, driven by a mix of insanity, despair, and pride. And one of the most evocative stories originates from the ancient Hindu mythology, centering on the figure of Sati. Sati was married to Lord Shiva, one of Hinduism's principal deities, in a union that was not approved by her father, Daksha. The legend of Sati's self-immolation unfolds against a backdrop of familial discord and spiritual devotion. During a grand yanja, which is a ritual sacrifice, from which Shiva was deliberately excluded, Sati confronted her father. Unable to bear the disrespect shown towards her husband and overcome by grief and indignation, Sati invoked her yogic powers and set herself ablaze, choosing to end her life in a fiery testament to her loyalty and love for Shiva. This mythological episode is often cited as the origin of the Sati practice, where widows would follow suit, committing themselves to the flames of their husband's funeral pyres. And while the practice sought to glorify the concept of ultimate devotion, it has long been outlawed in India, recognizing the severe social coercion and suffering that it inflicted upon women specifically. But parallel to this, in a different part of the world and under a different religious ethos, the early Christians under Roman rule faced a crucible of faith. Around 300 AD, Emperor Diocletian, notorious for his stance against Christians, instituted policies that led to widespread persecution. And in this era of turmoil, some Christian martyrs chose self-immolation as their form of resistance. And these acts were not just protests against the empire's oppressive decrees, but were imbued with deep religious significance. For these early Christians, the willingness to embrace death by fire was to bear witness to their faith, a supreme sacrifice mirroring the Passion of Christ. Their actions spoke volumes, serving as a beacon of resilience and an indelible statement of their spiritual fervor, inspiring future generations. In both these narratives, though separated by geography, culture, and religion, share a common thread. The use of self-immolation is a powerful, albeit tragic, form of expression and protest. Whether driven by personal devotion, as in the case of Sati, or a stark protest against religious persecution, as with the early Christians, these acts of self-sacrifice through fire underscore the complexity of interplay of faith, identity, and resistance. They remind us of the extreme lengths to which individuals have gone to uphold their beliefs and values, weaving a poignant tapestry of human resilience and tragedy throughout history. But even beyond the realms of religious or political protest, self-immolation has been practiced as a form of loyalty or mourning, as seen in medieval Tamiland and in the practice again of Sati in India, where individuals would immolate themselves on the funeral pyres of their lords or spouses, respectively. And in the tragic case of Kamran Khan, a 13-year-old student in Islamabad, Pakistan, who ended his life in flames due to the shame of not being able to afford a school uniform, highlights the personal despair of societal pressures that can drive such a drastic action. In a similar vein, the threat of self-immolation by forestry students in India over recruitment policies underscores the extent to which individuals are willing to go to draw attention to grievances, even if those might seem less monumental on a global scale. These modern occurrences prompt a reflection on the history and evolution of self-immolation as a form of protest. Far from being a new or religiously isolated phenomenon, self-immolation has deep historical roots which spans continents and cultures. It challenges the common misconception that this is a practice of the Vietnam War era or exclusively associated with Asian religious practices such as Hinduism and Buddhism.
But to speak to the Vietnam War and Buddhist cases of self-immolation, as well as the others throughout history, we find a common thread: lack of alternative means. The war machine has done its best to crush the traditional avenues for expressing dissent, such as free speech or peaceful demonstrations. When you are within its cogs, it's safe to say those abilities, while told to you as the things you are fighting for, in action seem to be suppressed, unavailable, or devalued. On May 16, 1967, which is the day to celebrate the birth of the Buddha, Nach Chi Mai, a Buddhist nun, committed an act of self-immolation outside her nunnery in protest of the Vietnam War. She was an elementary school teacher in Saigon and actively participated in Youth Serving Society, where she volunteered and taught within various orphanages. She was 33 when she chose this act of protest, and she wrote this: U.S. government, I offer my body as a torch to dissipate the dark, to waken love among men, to give peace to Vietnam, the one who burns herself for peace. In her farewell letter to her family, she wrote, Thai, don't worry too much. We will have peace soon.
The sociologist Emily Durkheim categorized these suicides into various things. So I'll say what they are, and Noah will explain it a little bit more. But the first is egoistic,
which refers to a personality trait or behavior categorized by an excessive focus on one's own interests, needs, and desires to detriment of others.
Altruistic.
This refers to the quality of selflessness, concern for the well-being and welfare of others. An altruistic person demonstrates a willingness to act in ways that benefit others, even if it involves personal sacrifice or inconvenience.
Anomic.
And this is one that she defined in her breakdown. Anomic conditions or states typically refer to the situations characterized by a breakdown of social norms, values, or a lack of moral or ethical guidance. It can lead to a sense of disorientation, alienation, or feeling of normalness within a society.
And finally, fatalistic,
which refers to the belief or attitude that events, outcomes, or one's destiny are predetermined and cannot be changed or influenced by individual actions or efforts.
And these various types suggest that self-immolation captivates and horrifies in equal measure because it embodies elements of all four categories. It is an all-at-once act of ultimate despair and defiance, a symbol of resignation, and a heroic self-sacrifice. This multifaceted nature perhaps explains the enduring power and complexity of self-immolation as a form of expression throughout human history, and it serves as a stark reminder of the depths of human suffering and the extremes of protest and loyalty. And while it's crucial to recognize the potential role of mental health issues in extreme acts of protest, equating such actions directly with mental illness undermines the political agency of the individual and the legitimacy of the issues they are highlighting. It is possible for an individual to express mental health challenges and still engage in politically motivated acts. Dismissing such actions as solely the result of mental illness will result in the following. It oversimplifies complex motivations. It ignores the nuanced and multifaceted motivations that drive individuals to political activism, even in its most extreme forms. And it undermines political agency. It risks negating the individual's political agency and the validity of their concerns, reducing their act as a symptom rather than a statement.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, it distracts from the issues because focusing solely on the mental health aspect diverts public and media attention away from the political issues that the individual sought to highlight.
Yeah, which I think is the phase that we're in right now. I very much think that on the day, and I bring this up later on, but on the day, what Aaron Bushnell did was the first time in a long time we've seen this media blackout pop open and talk about, because they were forced into a position to read off what he said, which was specifically, I will no longer be complicit in genocide, the genocide of the Palestinian people at the hands of the Israeli government.
And he was smart in the way that he chose his media to advertise it, which was Twitch, which was very younger ways of getting your news out, because it wasn't owned by a conglomerate that has so been controlled yet.
Yeah. And by doing that, it set this like domino effect. He streamed it he posted about it on Facebook. He cross-posted everywhere, but streamed on Twitch. It was clipped immediately and put onto Twitter, where even though Twitter is a cesspool of evil and diabolical shit, it caught like wildfire, and it forced the hand of conventional media to pick up the story. Because if it had not, they wouldn't have.
Yeah, because when in doing research for this episode, I found out that this is actually pretty common, and it's even common in the United States. And I had no idea.
Yeah.
I don't think that we ever would have known his name had it not hit Twitter, honestly. Because stuff happens on Twitch that I don't know about. I'm not on Twitch. But Twitter, a massive that is like...
Well, that's how it became international. That's how the actual citizens of Palestine got this message and heard about this, and participated in vigils for him before our news media even was ready to cover the story.
Yeah, and news media immediately slapped the suicide hotline on there. So recognizing Bushnell's acts as a political protest does not exclude the acknowledgement of mental health struggles. Instead, it calls for a nuanced understanding that respects the individual's political motivations while advocating for greater mental health support for those in distress. It does encourage a conversation that can hold space for both the political significance of the act and the need for compassionate responses to mental health challenges. And again, we say they pointed a gun at him.
Yeah, they were not worried about his mental health as they pointed a gun at his burning body. Let's just call a spade a spade. But the nuance of it all is what no one wants to talk about, right? Because having a nuanced, open conversation where you hold space for all differing opinions and ideas, and you hold space to listen rather than speak, would require like admitting, seeing, hearing, and actively participating, and like no one's trying to do that,
right?
In like the public modern media.
So for those who are wondering what comes next for Bushnell's family, I recommend looking into the Tragedy Assistant Program for Survivors, which is called TAPS. It is a nonprofit organization offering compassionate care and resources to all those grieving the death of a military loved one. Because Aaron Bushnell died in an act of protest against military interests, it is very unlikely that his family will receive any postmortem benefits. So this might be like a little self-serving. I just think taking care of people's families after a military loved one hits hard to home, close to home. So founded in 1994, TAPS provides a big variety of support services aimed at helping families and friends of fallen service members navigate their loss and find a healthy path towards healing. Their services are available to anyone who has suffered the loss of a military loved one, regardless of their relationship to the deceased or the circumstances of the death.
I love that. And because it is not only what we believe in, but it is what he would want us to do. If within your means, please donate to the relief in Gaza. Doctors Without Borders is in Gaza providing aid and medical assistance to the Palestinian civilians. They are standing with the Palestinian doctors whose hospitals are being bombed. Most recently on March 2nd, there was a hospital in Rafah, Gaza that was hit. A free way to support is to contact your members of Congress and call for an immediate ceasefire. AFSC.org has a pre-written form you can fill out and send and help bring action to what's happening in Gaza. You can also, of course, take part in protests, marches, rallies, and vigils. They're a powerful way to publicly demonstrate solidarity with Gaza. And AFSC.org also has free downloadable posters you can print. I also highly encourage, suggest, recommend doing your part in educating yourself about the history of Gaza and the Palestinian people. AFSC recommends the book Light in Gaza, Writings Born of Fire, which is an anthology that features the work of 12 Palestinian writers who imagine the future of Gaza beyond the cruelties of corrupt occupation and apartheid. There are also free study guides to help facilitate discussions about these writings, so I do recommend having open discussions with friends and family. And I mean this with my entire chest. Choosing to ignore what is happening in Gaza or actively remaining ignorant to it is why we as a human race feel so disconnected from the meaning and purpose of life. If you cannot do the bare minimum of witnessing and trying to understand why and how a genocide is happening in our lifetime, you are complicit in the atrocities of humanity. Ceasefire now, free Palestine. That $14.5 billion in taxpayer dollars should have gone to the American people, not the Israeli government. We could have used it for healthcare, ending homelessness, affordable housing, and an end to student debt, and still would have had some money left over. This has truly been one of the most shameful times to be an American. Aaron Bushnell should not have felt this was the only way to make a statement. But on the day he died, the media blackout lifted because they were forced to speak to the reasoning as to why. We should have never gotten to this point, but here we are, which is why it is so important for us to do what we can on an individual level. Listen, learn, and put pressure on our government.
Yep.
So rest in peace, Aaron Bushnell.
Yeah, dude. That was, I think I'll say like what I said to you when you sent me that video is like, I hope that whatever muscle memory that allowed him to carry on was purely physical. And I hope there was some transcendence that happened in that moment where like the character of Aaron Bushnell was gone and what remained was like a fucking echo of like his political stance, because that is truly the worst way to die.
Yeah. It was, I mean, I can't stress enough how just tough he was. I would never want to imagine myself in that situation or anyone, but I can almost guarantee none of us would have been able to handle it in the ways that he did. It was wild.
Yeah, it's I'm not going to recommend looking up like protests by self-immolation, but it's a little bit more common than we think. And I think that if you hear people talking, even like if you can't handle like the visceral images of like what's going on, at the very least, if you hear people talking about Aaron Bushnell and a form of mental illness, correct it and say it was a political protest. and then direct people to be a little bit more educated about Palestine. I am also very sensitive to shit that I see online. And it's very difficult, but there are ways to like support without putting yourself like in an emotional state where you can't do anything.
Yeah,
but that's
sure.
a luxury that we have here.
It is a luxury and a privilege that people in our country have the option to bear witness and listen.
I think we were talking about it a little bit, and I saw a photo. Like I follow a photographer on Instagram who shares interviews that she does with children in Palestine, and it's very disturbing because she'll interview like a 3-year-old about how he feels about losing like his infant sister, and she shows everything of them pulling like the body out and everything. But one of the most like visceral images I think was like a little girl sitting in an alley with a dog as like Gaza's being bombed and she's bloody. Her whole family is dead and she's just hugging a stray. And in that moment, there's like just comfort between the two. And it affected me so badly because it's like, that is the only comfort that these two living beings can find. And it's so fucking human. And it's something that like you can transplant to any part of the world and it still should invoke a sort of reaction of like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah.
Because I'm not seeing military men. I'm not seeing Hamas suffer. I'm not seeing any negotiations going on. All I'm seeing are like little girls hugging stray dogs in alleyways because their whole family's dead.
Yeah.
I'm seeing like babies being pulled from rubble. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I thought that war took place on battlefields and stuff, you know, because that's how we've been raised. No, United States came into World War II and we fucking took it to like the no man zones, you know, and we locked it down and we came in as the heroes. And now it's like, I'm seeing babies on my Instagram feed and I'm seeing like elderly people no longer have the care of their family because they've all been killed. And I'm like, this is a battlefield. This is a fucking neighborhood.
Yeah.
We're bombing hospitals.
Yeah. It's insane. Because they use the excuse of like, oh, we had intel that Hamas was there. Hamas was in this residential area, in this hospital, in this refugee camp.
Yeah.
And to that I say, bull fucking shit. First of all, bull fucking shit. You're telling me that you got such strong intel that like Hamas terrorists, quote unquote, were in this facility that you felt comfortable enough to drop fucking bombs on them, but you wouldn't send like a special ops team to go in and get those few people. You thought that it was worth annihilating in an entire civilian population for the hope that you got maybe one guy that you wanted on your target list. And that's why I feel very comfortable calling this a genocide. Because the amount of mass casualties of civilians, of children, women, men, boys, elderly people, it doesn't, civilians.
Yeah.
It does not matter. It does not count to them. They do not consider them human. Therefore, it doesn't matter that they get hit in the crossfires.
And not to like detract from it too much, but like I was listening to a podcast going into a deep dive of Frank Herbert's Dune. And it was mostly going into like his inspiration for writing it and a lot of the symbolism. And a lot of it was what we've done to the Middle East for oil.
Yes.
And so when you go, I would recommend anyone going to watch Dune 2, go into it with the idea that the United States is a little more Harkonnen than we are Fremen, especially when they're talking about bombing them out of the goddamn sky. And the Emperor's daughter says, like, how do you bomb an idea? And then it just shows like we are creating the enemy we don't know how to fight because all we are doing is politicizing and radicalizing the boots on the ground in Palestine.
Yeah.
We are creating Hamas by creating radicalized individuals, because I may not be radicalized now, but I'm fucking radicalized when I see atrocities that happen like that. And I'm sure as hell going to be radicalized if I see it happening at my front door.
Yeah, 1,000%. Yeah.
Like,
it's not a what came first, the chicken or the egg situation. It's Hamas was a byproduct of the apartheid state of Israel, of the forced occupation of Israel. That is why it came about. Because if you sit and watch your people, your family, your neighbors, and your friends be systematically destroyed and eradicated and forced out, so much so that there are parts of was Palestine, is now Israel occupied areas where they've built fucking track housing that you would see in like Beverly Hills, swimming pools, country clubs, right next to, separated by a barbed wire fence and a refugee camp of the Palestinian people who were forced out of that area. That will radicalize you.
Yeah.
If you watched your mother be gunned down in the streets of Gaza as a child in front of you.
Yeah.
And you didn't the next fucking day say, guess what I'm going to be? A radicalized individual.
Yeah.
I would say you're the outlier, you're an anomaly. And so it blows my mind that like, you know, people act surprised. They, you know what I mean? Like, what do you mean? This was always going to, Hamas was always going to be the reaction to what Israel
We're feeding
did.
the monster under the bed. Like how great would it be to live in a world where like Hamas and Al-Qaeda are like blown off the map?
Mm-hmm.
How also great would it be to live in a world where you're not a citizen of a country committing genocide?
Yeah. You can't have one without the other. Like when the forced occupation occurs, the splinter cells appear.
Yeah.
And I hate to fucking say it, as you know they would, and as if you were there, you would agree, right?
Yeah.
Like I do not blame them for choosing violence when they have been asking for peace for fucking centuries. And they have just been blown to pieces century after century. At some point, you get to say peaceful protest and asking politely was never going to fucking work.
Yeah, it's almost like you put people in this shit situation and then you wonder why they turn to the only organization that can offer them some power.
Yeah,
despite
them into
being
the corner.
Terrible.
Yeah.
And it's like we all like to think we'd be altruistic in these situations, but I think I agree, if I was backed into a corner and it was my family, like what else am I living for? I'm living for fucking blood at that point.
Exactly. Not saying it's right at all, but I'm saying I am not shocked. And to act shocked is ignorant, honestly, in my humble opinion. So, I hate when people say it's a super complicated issue, because it's not. It actually is the most simplistic understanding of a quote unquote land dispute that you could ever find in the history books.
Yeah, because you have, it's complicated in the sense where some people don't know how to let both things exist. And it's like, well, you created the problem, so now you have to fucking find a solution. I'm not the expert here because I didn't create the problem. All I know is that someone's got to fucking solve it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't come with us bombing hospitals. Like, do a fucking demilitarized zone and create like a conglomerate of representation of the Middle East so that they can have their own independent type NATO where they make decisions that are specifically on Middle Eastern countries. Give Israel a piece of the pie so that they also have equal representation in there, but like figure it out with like North fucking Korea and South Korea. Like, figure it the fuck out. But like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have the answers because I was public schooled. But all I know is that I know the difference between right and wrong, and this is very wrong.
Yeah, I agree completely. So, okay, well, on that note, I will say I will definitely be adding the Doctors Without Borders link and also the link to TAPS. We will definitely add those in the link tree, which is in all of our bios. We are at Go to Hell Podcast. I am at Noelle Fain. That is at Sithlard. And also in those link trees, you'll find those. You'll find also our merch. 100% of the proceeds are donated. I think we can brainstorm some ideas to donate as well. In support of Palestinians. And of course, as always, you can donate directly to these organizations and just send us over proof of that. We'll send you the PDF file of the art and you can do whatever you want with it. Or you can, of course, get the merch from our merch site and all of it will be donated. You can also find links to our Patreon. $1 gets you in. You can find links to our Discord server. And I don't know why you'd need it, but links to Hear Us, which is anywhere podcasts are heard. So, I'm not in the mood for a hail. I will say that.
I'm not really either. It seems inappropriate.
Yeah. So I will give a ceasefire now and free Palestine.
Agreed.
Let's get the fuck out of here.
Bye.
Bye.